Now, this episode of Unmasking the Killer of the Missing Beaumont Children should be the last before the book of the same name is released, which will be available on Audible, ebooks and on bookshelves. But when? Now, due to a fair bit of new, very pertinent corroborated information coming to us through the Facebook page Unmasking the Killer of the Missing Beaumont Children, we needed to add this to the book. So, hence the delay. However, we feel these new additions, when added to what we already know regarding Harry Phipps, solidifies the fact that he is the likely killer of the missing Beaumont children. And to this Facebook community, myself and Bill say a huge thank you to many of you that are genuine in wanting to solve this case. In this final summary and last episode, myself and Bill Hayes put to rest some misinformation regarding this abduction that has permeated the media for over 5 decades, that has never been true, yet still does the media rounds till this day. We also will summarise clues missed at Colley Reserve that fateful day, that when added together with the overwhelming amount of circumstantial evidence stacked against Harry Phipps, solidifies our point that Harry Phipps was the abductor and likely killer of Jane, Anna and Grant Beaumont. Now, firstly, the misinformation. The media over the decades have continually said the man seen at the beach with the children had blonde hair or bleached blonde hair, in need of cutting, or a surfy looking dude. This has never been true. However, media outlets to this day have continually regurgitated this misinformation, sending the public on a wild goose chase. Fact: the man at Colley Reserve that fateful day had light brown to fair hair, brushed back and parted to one side, and was middle-aged. He was not a teenager or in his early 20s. However, there is an old adage: never let a good story get in the way of the truth. Fact: Jane, Anna and Grant Beaumont did not receive the pound note from the man at Colley Reserve, even though they were seen at Wenzel's Bakery with one. They received this amount of money someplace else, but it was not at Colley Reserve, as we will see shortly. Now let's combine clues missed with circumstantial evidence. Firstly, clues left at Colley Reserve that fateful day have been hibernating for over 50 years that, once realised, their significance indicates the individual that abducted the Beaumont children highly likely resided within a 300-metre half radius of Colley Reserve, and that he was a local. Why? The man seen playing with the children that day at the beach was travelling very light. Several eyewitnesses stated the man who had placed his clothes on the park bench, as you can see here, only had with him a towel, a pair of trousers and a shirt. No carry bag, wallet or car keys were spotted. Now, if this man lived a few kilometres from the beach, one could expect a carry bag of some sort. His car keys and wallets could have been in his trouser pockets or placed under his clothes. However, none were seen. One of these witnesses had an excellent view as they were sitting on this park bench less than 1 metre away. Now also, the man seen with the children was already lying face down on his towel before the children, and it seems the witnesses arrived at Colley Reserve, not after. Now, it was also noticeable he was watching the children play in the shallows before they ran up from the beach and placed their towels just behind him, where he was lying, as you can see here.
They would have gone straight in the water. She would have told Grant he's not allowed to go past the top of his bathers, because that's what she used to say to him. She used to joke about, don't you get your belly button wet or I'll get cross at you. It would have sunbaked, kids would have built sandcastles. Yeah, it would have been just an average day, really.
Then the children went over and played underneath the sprinklers and then returned to their towels. Now, what is also interesting, that Grant and Anna Once they return to their towels and dry off, they go over to the man without any prompting from him and immediately started chatting, laughing together as if they were familiar with one another. Grant was jumping over him and Anna flicking him with a towel. And then Jane joined a short time later, also flicking him with her towel. This was more like a parent playing with a child. Because of this interaction, the eyewitnesses said it seemed they knew one another. Questions. Was this man waiting for the children? Was this a prearranged rendezvous? This close familiarity very much indicates they had met previously and the connection was strong. But where and when did this connection start? A day or days before? Or could it be that this man was already known to the children? And if so, how?
I believe that they'd met him before. It's not the first time they'd met the man. It was quite a friendly, it was almost like a parent playing with the children.
Also, this man was not seen swimming. His hair was neatly brushed back and parted to one side, which may well indicate that he had not been in the water. Now, brushing back hair is okay, we understand that. However, parting it to one side without a mirror, interesting. If he had been for a swim, this was well before the eyewitnesses and the children arrived at the beach. So if he wasn't there for a swim, one could be forgiven to think he was there waiting for the children. Now, this is vital. Our money has been taken. You may remember Jane was last seen at Wenzel's Bakery buying lunch for $6 with a pound note that her mother did not give her. Nancy only gave Jane, Anna and Grant a few shillings for the bus ride to and from Colley Reserve and some lunch for the children and Nancy on their return. As spoken about in Chapter 2, what happened that day.
Jim's wife, Nancy, gives their eldest daughter, Jane, enough small change to cover bus fares and lunch.
Bill Hayes and myself have asked many professionals, including members of the South Australian Police Force, where did Jane Beaumont receive this £1 note from to pay for lunch at Wenzel's Bakery? And all said, at the reserve, from the man. This is not correct. Yes, she did receive the £1 note from the man, but it was not at the reserve. Why? Let's not forget that soon after playing with the children, the man approaches the eyewitnesses and asks, "Hey, has anybody seen anybody messing with our clothes? We've had our money pinched or stolen." So now no one at the reserve has any money, not him and not the children. And not once did this man state to the witnesses that his wallet had been stolen. The reason? There was no wallet. With no money at Colley Reserve, both the man and the children, this man was able to connect with the children and further gain their confidence. As Xanthi Mallet, a well-respected criminologist, states, the 3 ways to entice a child is with money, kittens or lollies. The children followed the money.
The elderly couple reported that the man with the children said they'd lost their money.
Do you believe that was coincidental or was that part of the plot?
It was the plot. It was the plan. Now you
Take their money,
take their money,
leave them vulnerable,
of course, and then
come in as the White Knight.
Yep. Now, how did this man know that Jane had any money? The few shillings cash that Nancy Beaumont gave her was placed in her light blue airline-style carry bag. If the theft of Jane's purse was a random act by an unknown perpetrator, how did the thief rummage through the man's clothes and Jane's bag without nearby witnesses noticing? Why? Because there was no mysterious thief. It was the man, and how would he know Jane had any money unless he looked inside her bag? The ideal opportunity was while the children were playing under the sprinklers. Also, what is astonishing, this man helped dress Jane, Anna and Grant before they all walked away north to the change rooms, as you can see here. As Nancy Beaumont said to the press at the time, Jane would never allow anybody to dress her. She was quite a mature 9-year-old and quite capable of pulling up her shorts. The eyewitnesses also found this behaviour from the man bewildering. This blind trust may indicate the children knew this man quite well and trusted him as more like a father or kind uncle figure. The question we ask, did the children know this man from meeting at Colley Reserve or also in other social settings? Now let's look at the colours. Jane had a one-piece pink bathing costume with light green shorts. Anna's red and white striped bathers, and Grant's green and white striped bathers with green shorts. Jim Beaumont later said to the reporters the children's bathing apparel was distinctive. Harry Phipps's favourite Satin colours were pink, lime green, dark green, red, orange, yellow and purple. Coincidence? The time factor. The time factor would indicate the man was a local. According to eyewitnesses, Jane, Anna and Grant started to leave Colley Reserve with the man just after midday at about 12:10 with no money. As the man said, our money had been pinched. The children arrived without the man at Wenzel's Bakery with a pound note at about 12:25, 12:30 p.m.
And this is one of the mysteries of that day. Earlier at the beach, the children had lost their money. Yet Jane now pays for their lunch with a crisp £1 note. A note her mother had not given her when she'd left home.
The mother gave him 8 shillings and 6pence to get the lunch. Jane handed him a £1 note.
Within this 20-minute time frame, the children walked with the man 90 metres north along Colley Reserve to the change rooms, as you can see here, and this was all in the opposite direction from Wenzel's Bakery and their bus stop. Now, at the change rooms, the children waited outside while the man went inside and changed. Now, from the change sheds, the children and the man were not seen walking back along Colley Reserve towards the main thoroughfare of Jetty Road and the bakery, as you can see here. So they must have travelled somewhere close enough to make a stop, leave their towels and Jane's carry bag, and with a £1 note in hand, walk to Wenzel's Bakery. Who the assistant who served Jane did not see her holding a bag or carry towels. Also, the lunch bought was 1 pie, 5 pasties, 6 finger buns and 2 large bottles of fizzy drink. This is a lunch for more than 4. It's a lunch for 6. Also, due to about the 20 to 25 minute time factor, the logistics come into play, which indicates the use of a car is implausible. So there is only one other alternative. The man lived close to Colley Reserve, as discussed in detail in Chapter 12, Follow the Money. And former head of major crime, Ken Thorson, stated it was highly likely that the children did not leave the area. Mostyn Matters and Peter Vogel, along with their police colleagues who worked at the Glenelg station in 1966, believed the same, as do many present-day former detectives. As discussed in this chapter, Follow the Money, me and Bill Hayes set out in detail that once a car is in play, the time factor dramatically blows out. So the use of a car is not plausible. Also, a vehicle will indicate that this man was from another suburb. One alternative, the children and the man walk along the Anzac Highway, as you can see here. But the further away they walk, the less time they must have to return to Wenzel's Bakery and the more chance for them to be seen. As again in Chapter 12, Follow the Money, we show that walking this route at a Grant Beaumont's pace with stops included, the time factor again blows out. Therefore, the most plausible explanation is they walked east across the reserve from the change rooms and up Augusta Street, as you can see here. Harry Phipps's residence is located on the corner of Augusta Street and Sussex Street, Glenelg. The children collected the £1 note and walked to Wenzel's Bakery. The the time factor fits, as me and Bill have walked this route several times. Also, what stood out to us when standing in front of Harry Phipps's former residence was how goddamn close he lived to Colley Reserve and how simple this abduction really was. Now add this to circumstantial evidence I'm about to detail, and we have the perfect storm, as also noted in Chapter 8, Circumstantial Evidence. Firstly, it has been said on numerous occasions on Facebook posts unmasking the killer of the missing Beaumont children, you cannot convict on circumstantial evidence. Really? Well, you better tell the judge in the Chris Dawson case, as a New South Wales judge is now considering how long Chris Dawson will spend in jail for murdering his wife Lynette in 1982, a disappearance and murder that had gone unsolved for 40 years. His conviction was based solely on circumstantial evidence, which was a lot less than we have on Harry Phipps. As Duncan McNabb, a former New South Wales police detective, award-winning true crime writer, investigator and crime editor for 7 News, states regarding convicting on circumstantial evidence. The answer is a little tricky. Usually more quality than quantity of information is required. Now, for example, the location of Harry Phipps's house is compelling, but only after you work out the logistics of the Beaumont case. Many contested criminal cases are driven entirely by circumstantial evidence of varying impact. Geography, logistics, ownership of time, and so on. The police need a reasonable cause to suspect to arrest somebody, and this requires some compelling circumstantial evidence. Might be 2 or 3 pieces of persuasive information, it might be a pile. Now, concerning Harry Phipps, it's the latter. So can you convict on circumstantial evidence? Yes, you can. And keep in mind this, circumstantial evidence can have a distinct advantage over direct evidence. Statements can come from multiple sources, which they have, that reinforce each other to help form the narrative. And weaving all this information together supports the premise that Harry Phipps was involved. Now add this to circumstantial evidence. Harry Phipps fits the description of the man seen playing with the children at the beach that day. Harry Phipps was an avid swimmer at Glenelg Beach and frequented Colley Reserve. And he also lived 190 metres in direct sight of Colley Reserve. Harry Phipps was known to hand out pound notes. He also had an insatiable satin fetish, coupled with deviant sexual behaviour directed at children. He engaged in deviant sexual behaviour and exhibited an overwhelming obsession with making and wearing satin dresses, mostly in the shades of lime green, pink, purple, red, orange and yellow, darkly reminiscent of the colours worn by the Beaumont children on that fateful day. Also, Harry Phipps allegedly sexually abused his eldest son Hayden from the ages of 3 to 13. Also, Linda, not a real name, presented damning information alleging that Harry Phipps sexually assaulted her in the 1970s as a 13-year-old schoolgirl, which we discuss in Linda's case in Chapter 16. Also, Christine, again not a real name, accuses Harry Phipps of sexual abuse that occurred inside the Castelloy cottages, as you can see here, with other like-minded men. Bill Hayes is working with this individual. This is detailed in Chapter 23, The Evil Choir. And what about Anglican Archbishop of Adelaide, John Hepworth, who's now deceased, knew of Harry Phipps in paedophilic circles in the 1950s and onwards? Also, Hayden Phipps, Harry's oldest son, stated he saw the Beaumont children in his backyard that fateful day around lunchtime, describing the children down to their carry bag Jane had with her that day. He also mentioned the colours of the towels the children had with them. He was not sure of the colours, but remembered they were bright colours like yellow and orange and red. Hayden was surprisingly not too far from the facts. Unbeknownst to most of us, even now, Jane, Anna and Grant's beach towel colours were blue and to the same pattern of yellow, green, red, black and white stripes. A coincidence? Now also on that fateful day, Hayden said that he was home for lunch after working at the bowling alley when he saw the Beaumont children in his backyard. It's worth noting that Hayden could have said he saw the children in the morning or the afternoon, but he saw them around lunchtime, which coincides with the children and the man leaving the beach together and walking to the change room just after noon. Another coincidence? The man at the beach wore blue bathers with 2 white stripes down either side, the same colours as the nearby Henley Beach Surf Lifesaving Club. Would you believe Hayden Phipps, Harry's oldest son, was a member of the Henley Beach Sailing Club? Is that another coincidence? Also, a husband and wife team who bartended at a private gentleman's club on South Terrace, Adelaide in the 1970s recognised Harry Phipps as one of the patrons among like-minded men gathered at the club dressed in women's clothing. Also, would you believe Elizabeth Phipps, the second wife of Harry Phipps, requested assistance in removing loads of satin garments, mostly dresses, from her house. This was after Harry was placed into care. One couple described her as distraught when telling them, "You have no idea what I've got myself into." I think we do. And this is all detailed in chapter 25, The Purse. In 2007, I met Elizabeth Phipps, Harry's former second wife. Now, when I was in the basement with her at her home, I spotted a beige purse that matched the purse Jane Beaumont had the day she disappeared. The initial police report described Jane's purse as white, but according to Jenny, Jane's best friend, the purse was beige, as shared in Jenny's story in chapter 11. Is that another coincidence? There is so much more circumstantial evidence that I will not detail here today, but is in the book Unmasking, the Killer of the Missing Beaumont Children, that really sets Harry Phipps apart from anybody else ever presented regarding the disappearance of the missing Beaumont children. To myself and Bill and many others, Harry Phipps is highly likely the killer of the missing Beaumont children. Now, to me and Bill, this information alone should ring alarm bells, as in 1966 you had an undetected predatorial pedophile living very close to Colley Reserve, fits a description and hands out pound notes. I mean, basically, if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. Now, Bill and I cover all this in much more detail in the upcoming book, Unmasking the Killer of the Missing Beaumont Children. When we combine all this information, creates a perfect storm that sets Harry Phipps apart from anyone else ever put forward in this case, as being the likely abductor and killer of the missing Beaumont children. This book should leave no doubt how these children were abducted and by whom. We also believe this book will rattle quite a few cages and ruffle many feathers, and so it should. Now, lastly, from myself and Bill, we would like to say thank you to all and the continually climbing viewership regarding these YouTube episodes and the Facebook post conversations, which have been astounding. This abduction and unsolved crime really did shake Australia to its core and change the country forever. This was the day the country lost its innocence. And can this abduction and disappearance of the Beaumont children be solved? We believe very much so, as this heinous crime was so simple, yet we have let this become so complicated over the decades, and it should not have been. Finally, and very heartening, we have several politicians, both state and federal, at the ready and willing to assist any way they can once the book becomes closer to the launch. Now, also incredibly pleasing is the media, print, radio, TV and social, at the ready for me and Bill to give them the green light, which will be done by first sending them this eagerly awaited book. A book that will leave no doubt at all who the killer is. That killer is Harry Phipps. Well, for now and until the book is launched, it's time to say farewell. And if you want to find out the truth like myself and Bill, do click the links below. You can pre-order the book, which many have done so already, which is now over 7,000 and climbing, which tells us how important this Beaumont children abduction case is and the need to solve it. So from me and Bill, we really appreciated your company, and we'll be available in answering questions or queries on Facebook, Unmasking the Killer of the Missing Beaumont Children. Can this case be solved? We believe so. As Dale Carnegie once said, most of the important things in the world have been accomplished by people who have kept on trying when there seemed no hope at all.
To ignore the information that we'd be given would of itself, I believe, be a crime that we'd be committing. We cannot sit mute and not say what we've been told. We have to do this because we've been told it, and we owe it to those children to do this. This event changed the state. It stole the state's innocence. It took away 3 children. If it was one of my children or grandchildren, I'd move earth to do this.